All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick are our 2024 preview and prediction for the Kansas State Wildcats. Chris Kleiman, 39-24 record compiled since 2019. Connor Riley and Matt Wells take over for the departing Colin Klein. And Joe Klanderman, fifth year in the role as defensive coordinator. 58th ranked recruiting class. Two straight 9+ winning seasons for KSU. Look at the offensive side of the ball. This is it was top 10 nationally in scoring offense. Showcased tremendous balance. They do lose some key components, though. The left side of their offensive line's gone. Ben Sinnott, Will Howard, obviously the big headline. But it's the Avery Johnson show in Manhattan. We made a video talking about him, a couple months ago, Nick. And this is a guy we're very excited for. In the bowl game, showcased some nice pocket awareness. Mainly just him being so calm and nimble with his feet. Nice high release. The ball really comes out on a line. Real accurate in the intermediate range. Good balance as a runner. Really makes some good reads. Love the speed, 6'1", 200 pounds. Certainly still working on bulking up as well, though. Didn't show panic mode, made good throws when he saw open targets in the bowl game. Was very, composed. Didn't have the greatest completion rating, Nick, but this is a guy that certainly protected the football. And a lot of people think that, Will Howard was somewhat forced out because the upside of this young man is incredibly high. And I'm glad that, Will Howard's not the starter, just because I'm excited for what Johnson may provide this year. And I think Howard's going to have a phenomenal year at Ohio State as well. So I think in the end it works out for all parties, Nick, and Avery's going to have a big-time season.
I think it works out for all parties is certainly the best way to characterize this. This is a very exciting time. I think Avery Johnson's an exciting quarterback. We talked about him at length, so I'll kind of keep it a little bit short here. But this is a guy that's a really strong quarterback, a really solid guy in the pocket. Nice footwork, really good pocket awareness is what I really think. Nimble on his feet, nice release. Got to bulk up a little bit, but in general, I think that's really the biggest thing outside of, got to just make sure he doesn't make mistakes. Didn't make any mistakes in his limited appearances last year. Was really efficient. I think he's a really solid arm, really high football IQ, and really solid in the pocket. I'm excited to see what he looks like this year.
Alongside him, they returned 4 starters led by DJ Giddens at running back, a guy that we figured would probably have a pretty good season last year with the departing Deuce Vaughn. But 1,200 yards certainly was a little bit on the higher of unexpected side. A physical running style. A player has nice receiving upside. Moves very well for his size, 6'1", 212. His elusiveness is very stout. 4 straight 100-yard games to end the year. And I love the addition here in Dylan Edwards, late add from Colorado, smaller frame back at 5'9", 165. Similar size and speed to that of the aforementioned Deuce Vaughn, Nick. Edwards capable of making a big impact in the receiving game, kind of like Deuce did. I think this is some exciting usage that's on the way from Edwards. Redshirt freshman Joe Jackson, likely the third stringer behind them. Giddens and Edwards is not a duo that many people will talk about, Nick, this year, but these guys can easily, have 1,000 yards all-purpose each, and I think they're going to shock a lot of people this year, especially in this conference. This will be a duo come December.
I like this running back duo. I think this is an incredible duo that's really solid. 2 really great backs to lead the line for this team. DJ Giddens, 1,200 yards on the ground last year, 5.5 yards per carry, and 10 scores for him. I expect extreme numbers out of him again this year. A really solid back, a top running back in the country. Then Dylan Edwards, he transfers out. A messy divorce for him at Colorado. Didn't really make a whole lot of sense, but he lands on his feet here at Kansas State. I think this is a great fit for him. He's a really exciting back that I think has a lot left in the tank that he can really bring to this offense. I really like what this running back room can do. They're really solid on the ground last year, 240 rush yards per game, 12th in the nation. They should easily be a top 10 unit in the country on the ground this year. I like what they have in the running back room.
Yeah, Edwards is still, a true sophomore. Speaking of an impressive second-year man, J.C. Brown at wide receiver, a player really sprung on at the end of the year. The fan base is really excited for what he can provide. Really emerged with 5 50-plus yard games to finish the year, 5'11", 174. Has the speed, played most of his snaps out wide, has versatility. Dante Cephas, things didn't work out for him at Penn State, but over 2K yards of production at Kent State. Strong possession pass catcher that has shown ability to be dangerous in space. Keegan Johnson, great ability to get in and out of his breaks. Good separator, will need to step up and hopefully provide a 500-yard season. Jaden Jackson, the 6-year CFB player, has had pretty much scarce production until this point. Second-year player Trey Spivey only had 1 catch. Added to BYU transferring Quentin Rice, who I think might be transferring over to cornerback. Then Sterling Lockett have no production to their name. So we'll need to see who breaks out. I think Garrett Oakley at tight end has interesting upside. Made some waves in the back half of the year his own right. And then Will Swanson offers some solid play as a blocker at 6'5", 251. So, a lot of young players on this offense, Nick, but all of them that are going to be stars. Edwards, Johnson, Brown, Oakley. These are all players that are really going to make impacts in this conference.
I think those are three really solid players there, Johnson, Brown, and Oakley, that you just talked about. Brown, 437 yards receiving, 16.2 yards per grab, 3 touchdowns for him. I forgot to highlight this, but Giddens is also involved in the passing game. He had 323 yards receiving, 11.1 yards per grab, and 3 scores last year. Keegan Johnson, 227, 9.5, and 2 scores for him. And then Garrett Oakley as a really solid, prototypical tight end, 154 yards receiving, 14 yards per grab, and 2 scores for him. So really solid offense in general. I love what this offensive pass catching group really has. There's few options, but very strong options. That is, if you're going to throw to those guys, you're going to find success very quickly and very early. As long as they can stay healthy, I love what this room has.
The offensive line, they've of course replaced a very elite left side led by Cooper Beebe. Easton Kintley revives from North Dakota. Was listed at right guard in his first 3 years. Made a smooth transition to left tackle this past season for them. Should be a good plug and play at 6'6", 310. Left guard Andrew Legang was pretty solid in his brief appearances. Handley Panzer was a good right guard. Figures move to center at 6'4", 310 pounds. Will need to improve his abilities in run blocking, though. His backup, played a lot of snaps, and Taylor Potier will take over. Also 300 pounds to his name. Should be good as a full-time starter. A few different guys saw extensive snaps at right tackle. Carver Willis, though, was the main guy, and looks like he'll be the starter over 24. Only about 291 pounds and was average in pass protection, but a reliable run blocker. Good offensive line here. Shouldn't have many issues, even with 3 starters departing, Nick. I think they're, pretty well endowed here on this side of the ball. A lot of experience that does return, though, nonetheless. Do the guys leaving the left side really worry you, or you think they're going to be all right?
I think it does worry me a little bit. I think it certainly is concerning when you talk about that they're losing that production on the left side. I think Easton Kintley from North Dakota is a really solid player. He's going to make a transition to left guard, or left tackle from right guard, that is. I don't know what that's going to look like. That's a little concerning, but at 6'6", 310, I think he can be okay and figure it out. Andrew Legang as well at left guard. Is he going to be able to step up and be a good, true starter for this team? The right side, I have zero concerns about. The right side is phenomenally strong. It will be a really great unit for this offensive line.
Looking at the verdict for this unit, the Wildcats' offense was very good this past season with balance, led by a run game that was elite in conference play. I think Giddens and Edwards will be one of the nation's most productive 1-2 punches. Avery Johnson will grow to an impressive tune on a weekly basis. I think the offensive line losing its left side, it's a bit of a sting, and the lack of size and depth at wide receiver isn't optimal, but these aren't going to cause this team the blunder, at least in the regular season. What do you think is the upside for this offense, Nick? Again, great balance, 37 points per game. The upside would be putting them in elite territory, it would seem, if they continue to improve these numbers. But I think it's certainly plausible they do.
I think they can get back to that 35-plus points per game. I don't know if 37, but I think they'll be still a top 20 points per game unit. I think they'll be a top 10 rushing attack, certainly, if they can get a way to improve the pass numbers just a little bit, and as well as keep up that high-scoring click that they have going on, which I think is very possible. This could be a very strong and powerful offense. I do like what they have running back-wise. I think they're very strong on the ground, and I think they'll be able to score a lot of points this year.
Looking at the offensive side of the ball, it's very stout for them. They lost 7 guys in the portal, added only 4. Do get back 7 starters. The edge department is in need of stars, though. Cody Stufflebean played 300-plus snaps, but was below average despite being 3rd in sacks. Chidi Obizower played only a couple snaps, nothing to his name during his freshman season. It seemed like Brendan Mott was really going to take big steps this past year. Failed to do so, but is an efficient pass rusher. His backup in Asa Newsome, being a redshirt freshman. Uso Samalo, 6'3", 340, a good gap clogger on the interior. Should certainly play at a higher level this year. His backup being 269-pounder Damian Ulalu. Only portal add was Travis Bates from Austin, PA, to plead DN. The more than quality player there should provide some help. They also have a 4-star Jordan Allen from last year's class entering his 2nd year in the program. Should find the field. I consider this will be a bit of a below-average defensive line at the moment, Nick. I really feel like that Mott should have took a step last year and he didn't. Uso was going to be good for them in the interior. They're going to need other guys to collectively step up. And, they were still good against the run. They did get absolutely abused by Iowa State at the end of the year. Really, the final 3 games of the year, they were no good against the run. The rough month of November. But these guys still play hard. It's, in those games, they were not all that good, but they still did win most of them. So I think they'll showcase some respectable improvements and be a collectively cohesive group. But in terms of playmaking against the elite opponents, might not be evident.
I think this is certainly a unit that has to find some room to improve, but overall it's not a bad defensive line. Brandon Mott, we need to see a lot more out of him. 27 total tackles for him last year, 4.5 tackles for loss, and 1 sack. +2 pass breakups for him. I want to see him potentially improve those numbers. Cody Stufflebeam, he needs to improve his numbers as well. 19 total tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks for him. I want to see him get those numbers up. Certainly, I think he can find a way to get that done. Uso Samalo as well as a solid piece. 18 total tackles, 1.5 each for tackles for loss and sacks. I think they bring in they return some other solid depth further down the depth chart. Toby Asunome, 9 total tackles for him as well. This is not a terrible unit. I think it lacks a sort of punch or that big name. I don't know if they're going to be able to get after the quarterback a whole lot this year. Definitely concerns me a little bit, but it's a unit that I think does have some upside.
Looking in the middle of this defense, a pretty respectable linebacking group led by Austin Moore. Great leader for this defense. A polished run defender with a quick trigger. Got into the backfield frequently. Needs to get better in all areas, though. Jake Clifton showed some nice effort versus the run as well and should emerge into a quality starter in his third year in the program. Austin Romaine played good, but was an incredibly poor tackler. Bayou Palmer's a veteran worthy of more snaps. Rex Van Wy played around 200 snaps in his own right. And, of course, the guy who played the most in Desmond Purnell was good versus the run, consistent coverage. Pretty good room here, Nick. Maybe guys that probably won't make impacts on Sundays, but I think in terms of, writing up the Big 12, they're certainly going to be able to do that this year.
I do like what this linebacker room has. I think Austin Moore's a really solid player, 63 total tackles, 12.5 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks. He's a really strong physical linebacker there in the middle. I think he's a guy you want to look at that's going to be a really good leader for this team. Definitely established himself as a good player. Austin Romaine, I like what he's done so far as well. 22 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 1 sack for him. In limited snaps, a guy that you could see a lot more out of this year. I think that they have some decent players in the linebacking room. Desmond Purnell, 51 total tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss, plus a pick for him. I like to see what he can do this year. This is a solid room.
I'm looking at the secondary. They returned both starting corners from last season. Jacob Parrish was a pretty good player in coverage. Very poor against the run, though, on the other hand. 4 picks and 9 pass breakups, though. Some great production there. Keenan Garber wasn't nearly as good, but played more snaps and should take a solid-sized leap. Justice James was pretty good in his backup role. Tyler Nellum only played in 1 game, but both are seniors. I think the safety group's pretty good. VJ Payne was a consistently effective player in all areas. Marquise Siegel, same goes for him. Really stout in coverage, was great versus the run. Nearly all of his snaps came from the slot, though. Jack Fabris, a redshirt freshman, only played a few snaps. Should get into a starting role, though. Jordan Riley, he'll compete with him, a 2-year starter at Ball State. Played lots of slot and box for them. Was a pretty good player for the Cardinal, though. 20 pass breakups for the last 2 seasons. And even had 96 tackles back in 22. Secondary's worked hard to improve, Nick. I remember a couple years ago we were talking about him. 127th nationally in opponent completion rating allowed. Down to 16th this past year. Good group here that's going to progress even more. Joe Klanderman and Kleiman, they've certainly put in a lot of great effort, and these players have certainly, paid off, and they've rewarded this defense big time.
I do like what the secondary has. I think they've added some solid pieces in the past couple of years and have built themselves up to a decent unit overall that can compete in this conference. Marquise Siegel, 63 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 9 pass breakups, joint highest returning tackler from last year with Austin Moore. That 9 pass breakups is also tied with Jacob Parrish, who has 9 pass breakups plus 4 picks, 44 total tackles from him. Really solid in coverage. VJ Payne, 57 total tackles, 3 pass breakups plus a pick. Colby McAllister, 27 total tackles and a pass breakup, and Keenan Garber, 22 total tackles, 1 pick, and 4 pass breakups for him. Really nice stats there across the board. I like this secondary a lot. This unit was pretty good last year, right? 68th in the nation. I think they can be a little bit better than that. They can certainly get higher than that, cut down from that 225 pass yards per game mark.
Looking at the final prediction for Kansas State, the Wildcats will be a hard team to beat. The home draws are great. They've beat Kansas 15 times in a row, and they avoid Utah. The offense will have a great rushing attack. Avery Johnson will show some good maturity around other young weapons in the receiving game. Defense worries me a tad with the D1, but I think the linebacking group will provide enough throughout the year. While again, that secondary proves to be a tremendous asset. This is going to be a great football team this year, Nick. 9 wins for me, 10 for you. I do have a slip up at Colorado being the difference. Overall, I have them losing all 3 games on the road. Not the easiest schedule, certainly not the toughest either at Iowa State and at West Virginia. I think will also be blemishes for the Wildcats. This team could easily, win 9 games or win 12 games and the conference. I think that's where the Wildcats' range is this season.
This is a phenomenal team that played in New Year's Six Bowl 2 years ago in the Sugar Bowl against Alabama, a very strong team that has had a lot of success in recent years out there in Manhattan, a team that's been really putting it together. The schedule, I think, is very favorable. I have them at 10-2. I think they'll beat Colorado on the road. That's a game that's certainly a toss-up for you. I do think they will struggle against West Virginia and Iowa State. I think the top of this conference, a lot of the teams are going to be punching each other, kind of knocking each other out. I do have this team going to the conference title game for me. I think this is a phenomenal team. I love what they have on offense. I think it's a phenomenal offense that has some really solid players. The depth does concern me if there's injuries early on. That could pose an issue for this offense, but in general, I like what I'm seeing. I think it's a very exciting offense. The defense, yes, there's some iffy parts. Specifically looking at the defensive line and the pass rush, where is that going to come from? That concerns me a little bit, but in general, I am very high on this team. I love the coaching. I think coaching is phenomenal out there in Manhattan. I think this team is very fun to watch, great home atmosphere, and a team that I think is really heading in the right direction. They're certainly a sleeper for the playoff. I could see them getting in. I like what they've put together here.